realize that the total cost will be at least 12 million. But before that, because it's the grant element is on quota basis, they will look at your GDP, they will look at your population growth. We fall under that category of a small country, and we only qualified to get a grant of $5 million. When the shopping list was provided, because the procurement was jointly done between the bank and the Ministry of Health, but the bank took a lead on it. So they realized that really they don't want to compromise quality. You can go and buy cheap products, but they really bought state-of-the-art ambulances and all of this, and they realized that there's a deficit. So out of that $5 million, I went to our state-owned enterprise reform project, which we are not using now. I said I was able to borrow at least $5 million there to be able to add on to this $5 million that we are receiving, making it $10 million. But the other $2 million is from our own local sources. That is what made it a whole package, so that we can fulfill the entire shopping list from the Ministry of Health. So the $5 million added, and the other $2 million, they're all from us. But the $5 million, the original $5 million is a grant. So the intention is by the time this, because it's an understanding with the bank, that as the project is going on, we should be able to mobilize more resources to be able to replace that $5 million that has been taken from the project of the state-owned enterprises.
Yeah, it's different. Maybe, but I just wondered, our concern is that $5 that you have taken from the SOA, yeah, was that done with the approval of the World Bank? Because they are the ones that replenish that $5 million. Was it, have you got their consent to use that $5 million?
In fact, we don't know partnership relationship. You cannot make any move before you touch it. You have to sit there. But in this one, it was like we were talking, we were brainstorming. And it was a mutual agreement that why don't we take this? Because I have to do it, because tomorrow if I have to replace it, I will also have to have their consent to be able to take from other funds that are fungible that I can replace it. But it was done with their consent.
I think basically the question that was raised with regards to that is the legal authority. Whether you have the authority or you've been given the authority by the World Bank or IMF to use,
yes,
from that what do you call it? No, the
SOE project.
Yes, the enterprises. The 35 million enterprise reform. Whether you had the authority to use 5 million out of that amount.
Yes, I said before you do that, I don't have the unilateral authority. It's based on negotiation with the bank, because they did the shopping and they realized there's a deficit. So we were shopping around to see exactly. Anything? No. This is something that is based on discussion with the World Bank. But if there is anything, I can ask the regional director of the World Bank to write something to us, because it's grant coming in. It's not something that the Minister of Finance made a unilateral decision. Yes, but it's negotiation. And during this period, you cannot go through all that bureaucracy.
Yes, we know it is negotiation. But one of the concerns also that especially one of the subject matter specialists raised was that these monies are used for specific purposes. And they're going to pay directly to the suppliers. Now, you have taken money from somewhere else and paid the suppliers. Now, when it is time for that amount to be repaid to the original source, how is it going to be done? You have to excuse my personal ignorance when it comes to financial.
Yeah, I understand. Honorable Chair, when you deal with the donors, you cannot, every step of the way, you have to have their approval. So this was based, as I said, on the shopping list. When we realized that there's a deficit, together we were looking at every project, how fungible these funds are, and that is why we were able to take it. The confidence that we have is that whenever we have additional funds or reallocation of certain funds from the allocation from the World Bank, they will replace it. So it's not something that I, as the minister, decided. No, it was based on discussions. We have videos late at night, and that is how the decision was made. But it was a mutual thing. It was not something that. But if you want something documented, I can ask them to write something to us.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I think the Honorable will help us understand whether this $35 million meant for the SOEs, whether these monies are in your control or they are still in the hands of the World Bank. And if you need to take anything from it, you have to consult with them. So maybe when you clarify that, whether you have the funds with you in your possession or it's still there, maybe understand how were you able to get access to those funds. So I think that could make the clarification. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think I missed that to clarify. The funds are still with the World Bank.
Thank you.
I don't have direct access to the funds.
That is clear.
No, thank you very much.
That was
Honorable Jaja, please, can you?
Yes. The funds are with World Bank.
Honorable Jaja, please, we'll come to you.
Yes, Honorable Minister, if my memory serves me well, when we were reviewing the estimates and when we were considering your budget, we saw that there was a deficit, a huge one. And I remember Honorable Drame, Honorable Bo, and myself, we spent sleepless nights in Tendaba to review it in order to cut the deficit. So there was a deficit when we approved your budget. Now, what I cannot understand, and at that time, if I remember well, you were opposed to SAP.
Exactly.
You were opposed to SAP. Now you are pro-SAP. And that is because of coronavirus. Is it COVID-19? But why are you laughing? This is not a laugh matter. And I know that some monies are coming. They have not arrived yet, but some monies are coming to help us fight COVID-19. You've mentioned 1 billion this morning, and more are going to come. So why the need for SAP? Why do you have, knowing that you already have a deficit? I cannot understand mathematically. I'm not a mathematician. But Honorable Mbo will help me, and maybe Honorable Dame. How on earth would you come with an SAP for a budget which is already hugely deficitary? And why the need for SAP? Since we are anticipating some financial help from somewhere to deal with this coronavirus, why not push SAP, both SAP and your revising budget, both of them, why not push them in anticipation of what we are expecting from elsewhere? Because we are going to go for more problems by calling for SAP at this moment. Don't you think so?
Honorable Chair, the fact that you have already appropriated, I cannot, even if I have $10 billion now, legally I cannot spend it because you've already put the ceiling. So what I'm asking is, open up the ceiling so that I can spend on top of what you have appropriated. Hopefully, by the time we go to the end of the year, maybe the deficit that we were anticipating, maybe it could go bigger or it can be smaller. That is why, along these lines, I'm still emphasizing. When I talk about fiscal discipline, I am saying in the midst of all this, the procurement aspect of it, the expenditure, everything. That is why there is a committee. Every fund that is being released, the committee of procurement, Internal audit, accountant general is here, permanent secretary, GPPA, they will scrutinize it. And believe me, they have been doing a good job. That is why, so far, what we have, the expenditure has been very, very, very tough for them to make anything, because everybody is within. So that ceiling, that's what we wanted to, because the money will be there and we cannot spend it legally. The donors that are coming, all of those things, at the end of the day, if I spend it without your authorization, it's illegal. You can, and yes, we anticipate to get more money, but no matter how much money we have, I cannot spend it without you giving me the legal authority.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah?
I think you don't want to do that because you might die, you may send you away.
Exactly. That is why it's an appeal. I'm appealing. There are various things. We could have used the legally the contingency fund, but I said the SAP is the best route so far, because we are talking about helping people. We are talking about a package that whatever we are doing is based on forecast and estimate. And seriously, we want to help. That is why I've said it. I am against SAP, but in the midst of this, I have to come.
Honorable Minister, I need more clarity on this $10 million from the World Bank regarding the shopping list. Where does this? Is it from the Ministry of Health or from the World Bank?
It's from the Ministry of Health sent to the World Bank on what they need.
Yeah, because the burning point on that list was, if you are following social media, there is a cry on the purchase of condoms in these trying times. So that's why the country want to know, why do we have to put the purchase of condoms in that shopping list when we are dealing with emergencies?
Honorable, it's news to me.
Yes, yeah?
It's news to me.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We need clarity. We need clarity. That's why the committee is saying, give us the list so that it can be shared with other members, and then people can know the full list that has been prepared by the Ministry of Health.
From here, I will ask the Health Minister to come and present the list.
Yes. I already did that.
Yeah. You already did that?
Yeah.
Yes, Honorable.
Yes, if you can allow me. In fact, I was just talking to the Minister of Health like an hour ago to provide us with a list of all the items they want to purchase from this 10 million, as well as the items they want to purchase locally from the local funds. So he promised that he's going to put it in a package and bring to us maybe today or by tomorrow, and that will be shared among the members of the select committee and actually all the members for us to understand. But we've been also told in very clear terms that the items they purchased was like a list that they said you can buy these items from this list here. So they gave you money. They said these are the things that you can buy. So it doesn't necessarily mean that condoms you do purchase, but it was in that list for them to be able to buy. But they said they are not buying anything because that is not a priority to them. That's what we've been told here. And when our report comes, that will be very clear. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to ask one clarification to the Minister of Finance. You know, we are talking about the SAP, which we know you're going to come with. But to help us also, when you come with the SAP, also give us where you're going to get the funding from, instead of going back and forth. Because if you give us a list of this is the expenditure you want to incur during the course of the year or for the rest of the year, tell us specifically also where those funds are going to come from, so that we know that whether this is from Gambia local funds or this from grants or from loan, whatever it is. And to also remind you about, during the budget, there was some issue we had about Karafi and some other items. Please don't forget to ensure that it's there, so that we can just do all of it holistically. Thank you.
Okay, noted.
I have a question. That is this rapid credit facility. You mentioned that it's a credit, a loan. Is it going to come to us to ratify? And this 10 million grant, is it coming to us to ratify, or have we already ratified this? What do we do with it?
When it comes to that, it is something that when it is domesticated, like it is on lent from the central bank to us in Dallas. So there is no need for ratification. It's an agreement between the central bank and the government of the Gambia that it's local. So this is something that we do deficit financing and all of those things. So that doesn't require the ratification of the National Assembly.
Even when it is central bank taking
yes.
on behalf of Gambia,
yes.
it has to be ratified by Parliament. They are committing us. And the laws, the Constitution is very clear on that. Why is it not coming to Parliament?
I think this has been the standard operating procedure. It's a facility they create, they extend to the central bank, and it is no more an external thing. It is domesticated. That is why they denominated in Dallas and on lend to the government of the Gambia. So maybe this one requires more debate, but it has been happening for centuries. I don't think this is something that once it is domestic, it's on lend from the central bank to the government of the Gambia, and it has never been a subject for ratification.
Well, I think the issue is the origin of the exam.
Yes, because the rule is whenever you are coming to the country,
and once it comes from an external
source, it has to come. It is subject to any loan that this country is taking on behalf, any loan, whether it depends, any institution that is taking a loan on behalf of the country, it must come to Parliament for ratification. So if Central Bank has been doing this, they've been doing something illegal, because how can we even be aware that these monies exist if they don't come to us for ratification? I think that's a big issue. Because without this, we wouldn't have known about this credit facility that it existed. Well, I think that's an issue we have to address.
Minister, also, one thing that we should all realize and accept is the fact that maybe it's something that has been going on, as he says, for centuries. Maybe I can say for 22 years. But that doesn't make it right. If it is not right, as per our laws, it is not right. Maybe it's about time it be rectified. So let's look at it and see if it is wrong. Then we rectify it. If it is right.
Well, this
but
is
I was told by excuse me, let me just add. I was informed by a veteran or parliamentarian who is still a parliamentarian here that all loans have always been subject to ratification. So I don't know where we stand, but let me allow you're done, Honorable Director. So majority leader, please. Minority. Let's allow others to. Sorry.
I've taken the wing from my mouth. It was exactly that I wanted to ask. Even the grants, which you know is just a charity, should come to Parliament because it have some other condition. So even the grants do come, so I think where grants are coming to Parliament, the loans must come to Parliament. And then if you look at the Constitution, it is talking about agreements. So all these loans, they are all agreements. And the Constitution is not even telling us loans, it is telling us agreements. Yeah. Then, Honorable Speaker, on the other issue, yesterday when Honorable Jati spoke about this 5 million to be ratified in Parliament, I think she was right. Because, you know, if we are appropriating, it is one way to appropriate. But the spending authority, we appropriate and allow them to spend. And COVID-19, we pass our budget before COVID-19. If there was no environment, they will look for funds outside and then come to Parliament as they are proposing now. So I'm meant to understand they via 500 million. But the authorization of spending actually also should be done by Parliament. Then I have a question that I want to ask. Honorable Minister, we are in an era of COVID-19. which is actually new to everybody. So I don't know whether you have a special account where to lodge all these funds coming for special, COVID-19 for accountability purpose.
Yes, we do. We have created below the line account, and all funds are lodged into that account.
Issues were raised by Honorable JJ. Let him take the response.
Before he responds, let me just read so we can all be together on the same. Yes. If you look at the Constitution under Section 155 loans, 155.3, it says no loan shall be raised by the government on behalf. No loan shall be raised by the government on behalf of itself or any other person or authority, otherwise than by or under the authority of an act of the National Assembly. 4. An act of the National Assembly authorizing the raising of a loan shall provide that the terms and conditions of a loan shall be laid before the National Assembly and that the loan agreement shall not come into operation, emphasis added, until they have been approved by the National Assembly, and that the money received in respect of a loan shall be paid into a consolidated fund or some other public fund of the Gambia. I think this is absolutely very clear.
Can I add something to what she said, Madam Speaker?
So I don't know where the confusion is with regards to this. But this is a constitutional provision.
Yeah, and that is emphasized by the Public Accounts Act. I've been raising my hand since, Madam Speaker, and we should be given equal opportunity.
I think you have had more than
No, I've had one opportunity. They've all had so
let's
many.
be fair.
No, let's be fair. They've already spoken so many times.
Please,
No, let us be
spoken
fair.
more than
Come
once.
on. No, we've spoken so many times. We need to be given equal opportunity. We are members of parliament for
Madam,
We are
I
not
think-
here as puppies. Come on.
I think
Please,
what
can you withdraw your word?
No, we are not here.
No,
I am not here
I'm
as a
not going to
puppet.
accept. Come on.
No, I said
No,
I am not
I'm
here
not
as a
going to
puppet.
accept. Come
I
on.
will not withdraw, Madam Chair. I
Please,
said
with
I am
all
not
due
here as a
respect,
puppet.
please, can you
No, I
withdraw?
said I am not here as a puppet, and I am not. I will not withdraw it.
Please.
I will not.
But then you cannot tell me, you cannot
I
use the
said
word
I am
come on.
not. I said
You
I
cannot
am
use
not.
the word come on. Maybe you did not realize it, but you said come on.
I said I am not here as a puppy.
Nobody
I
is
am
here
not.
as a puppet.
Please.
Anyway, Honorable Jata, please can you go ahead?
No, I am not.
Honorable Minister, what he was referring to, he was not referring to a law. He was referring to an arrangement. So this is the problem. What the law is saying is totally opposed to your arrangement. That's what Honorable Jaita is trying to tell you. So it means that all that has been happening was a tradition you inherited, but it was not legal. And it is not legal. But that has to stop, because for purposes of accountability, you know, somebody raised a question, and I'm going to that, I'm coming to that too, and I don't agree with that below the line account. The below the line accounts were closed years ago, since I was in that old parliament. We kicked against that, and they were all closed. In normal circumstances, my view is, all the monies that are coming into this country with regard to COVID-19 should be paid into a disaster account that already exists for purposes of accountability, because they are meant for disaster, for relief, and there is an account for that which is managed by the Disaster Management Agency. So I don't see any need to open a below the account for this purpose, because for me, we have made this unnecessary. Years ago, these accounts were being used to fraud, and that's why they were closed. So if you tell me you are reopening that again, personally, I'm against it. And personally, my view is, any money that is coming now into this country in connection with COVID-19 should be paid into disaster relief account, which exists for purposes of accountability. And my last comment is, the 500 million, like the minority leader was, for me, it's very intricate. We approved of something, And now, it has been taken from one place to another. Again, here, which law are you referring to? Which is the law guiding that? That also was your arrangement, your regulations, and the arrangement that you make to make that possible. And that is why, in the new standing orders, we are saying that all such regulations must come to this assembly for consideration, because we want to make sure that they conform to the law. And my view, and generally they don't conform to the law. So, and that's why I'm particularly interested to see, and tomorrow if possible, you say possibly even today by 4 o'clock, I'm particularly interested to see how and where these monies were fired from one sector to the other. Because it's very important for us to know, for purposes of accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Nyari.
And also, Honorable Minister, it's not only that what they were doing is illegal, we also have an act. As to what my honorable colleague Yakuba has said, she quoted the part of the Constitution and also the Public Accounts and Public Finance Act, Section 41, the issuance of state debt. If you go to Section 43, borrowing, subsection 2, the National Assembly shall ratify international loan agreements between the state and other subjects of international public law. Central Bank is part of the state. And like the Constitution says, it is only the Minister of Finance that should take the loan. So even if you consider it as domestic, before it became domestic, it was international between another state to the Central Bank. So in that way, it still needs to come to the National Assembly for ratification. So in fact, the law has been broken. And it is this August Assembly that should look at how we should rectify why that law was broken and to see, because I think we should start giving penalties, because laws have been flawed and we are just taking it as tradition. We demanded change in 2016, and to be honest with you, I have still not seen any changes. It is still the same ways that things are being done, and we must stand and say no. You yourself mentioned that was how it was done. And we refuse to accept the way things were done before, and we are demanding for change. So in effect, even though that money is there, it needs to be halted. We need to go back and do it the proper way. Even if we are going to lose out, let us lose out with our integrity. But we need to make sure, and you've also mentioned that there was no documentation. Am I not right? I mean, somebody mentioned something, and you said that you will go and ask them to do a writing. How can we, I beg your pardon? $5 million. $5 million. So we cannot do something without documentation. Even in our own homes, we document things. So as a country, as a government, we have to be responsible. We must demand for documentation. How are we going to do our oversight functions without documentation? How are we going to know the conditions? I worked at a bank. I know that even for a simple loan, there must be conditions precedent to draw down. How are we going to monitor? How are we going to do our oversight function if we do not have documents? Honorable Chair, let us be serious with our work. We have been entrusted by the people. We cannot work without documents. So we demand that documents come here, and we also demand that procedure is followed before any loans, because it is stated both in the Constitution and with the accompanying act that it must be ratified by this August Assembly. And as a committee, we should do our oversight function properly, because we owe it to the public. We owe it that no fraud. I'm not accusing anybody, like I always say, but it is my duty, it is my job to have my eyes open to follow every single penny that goes into this country. How it is spent, how it is acquired, the conditions precedent, because we have ratified so many loans. We went to Brussels, pledges were done, but not anything, not even 12% of those things were received. We came dancing, we came jubilating, nothing happened, because we were left out in the dark. There was no transparency, and I will say it loud. We need transparency, we need accountability, and we are tasked to make sure that we do that. We are not accusing anybody, we are not witch hunting, but we need to do our job well, and that is what we need to do, and we can only do that with documents. Without documents, how can we hold you accountable? So we need documents.
Thank you very much. Honorable, before I allow the floor, may I just say
documents?
I think I raised the issue of the authority, whether there's anything documented, and the Honorable Minister said that he was going to provide us with whatever it is, because we questioned the authority. That's one of the issues that came up yesterday. We were all concerned about that 5 million. Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair. The Minister of Finance to help us understand how does the IFMIS, that's the Integrated Financial Management System, how do they come into play as far as these funds we are talking about is concerned, and what's the relationship between below the line accounts and the IFMIS system overall to ensure public finance management? So if you can explain that to us to understand.
Honorable Chair, is it protocol-wise? Is it allowed for my accountant?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's committee.
Yeah, it's committee.
Yeah. I just want to allow my accountant general to explain exactly. No, we said we will provide the documentation, and I just wanted also your subject matter specialist is worked at the central bank for decades. I'm sure he'll be able to provide. I don't want to go into legal arguments and all of, but it's a program. But I think I will leave it to the legal experts to debate that sort of arrangement or what sort of facility. Under normal circumstances, the lender or the creditor is the one that always demands, is based on terms and conditions, that I cannot have you access this unless it is ratified by the National Assembly. But if it is a facility, by definition, and later domesticated, you will take it like a local transaction. This is our own layman's interpretation. But let me allow the accountant here to explain below the line and project account, because when the funds come in, he's the custodian of the funds, and he is the one that will advise and guide us as to how. My understanding was he wanted to make sure that all of these things are properly accounted for. That was why the idea of coming up with this special account just for COVID. That was the whole idea, but nothing to create anything new. So let me just allow him.
The area of concern from my side is the issue of ratification of loans.
That's what, but local loans are not ratified.
Oh, it's all loans.
Local loans.
And because let's look at the constitution.
The Constitution says it's very clear. No loan. No loan shall be raised by government on behalf of itself or any other person or authority otherwise. Yes, we have been no loan. Whether it is international or here, it's a loan. It didn't differentiate international loans or internal loans. It is very clear.
Guys, he doesn't want to bridge that agreement. That's his point.
Here, we're talking about two things here. There's government as fiscal authority and the central bank as the monetary authority. Now, what comes to Parliament here for approval is expenditure that impacts the treasury coffers. Central bank operating expenses has nothing to do with government. It is not approved, and it doesn't affect the treasury. It's a whole kettle of fish. Now, with regards to the relationship with the IMF, that is already agreed to, and they have their own procedures. And whatever is contracted comes in respect of balance of payment support, as is in this instance, as I tried to explain to you earlier on. Like, it does not affect government. It is to restore the reserves of the central bank, whereby whatever deficit there is at the end of the year. With regard to loans, government is in the business of borrowing from the central bank on a weekly basis through treasury bills, and those are local, but they do not come to Parliament to have that approved. Understand? So that is what we have to understand and clarify. It is those loans that are contracted by government that have an impact on the revenue managed by the treasury. That is what comes here for ratification. Understand? That is the issue. Thank you.
I don't know, but do I take it that at the central bank with the IMF, for instance?
You see, the central bank is the lender of the last resort to government. So you see, I mean, on a daily basis, the government can have recourse to the central bank and they can give them funds without coming to Parliament. Understand?
Where does the central bank get those funds from?
Yeah, because I mean, it is the supply of currency in this country. That's why it is the monetary authority.
Financiers.
No.
Yes. Yes, Honourable Speaker, I think these are two things that we really need to differentiate. Okay. Okay, Honourable Chair, I think there are two things that we need to really differentiate very well. You see, this credit facility that's extended to central bank is not meant for the central bank of the Gambia, but it's meant for the government of the Gambia. We need to understand that. And if it is meant for the government of the Gambia, it must pass through the processes that is defined in the Constitution. But the daily activities of the central bank in terms of lending money to government through treasury bills, those ones do not need to come over here because this is their money. And they through their activities of the central bank, they are able to generate those funds and to lend to the government of the Gambia or to other commercial banks. Those ones do not need to come over here. But specific money from the international community that is meant for the Gambia government that they want the central bank to manage must pass through here for us to ratify. Maybe in the past, that's what they were doing, but it's wrong. And we just want to give the minister the benefit of the doubt to consult with the Solicitor General or the Minister of Justice just to ensure that we are all on the same page. But we are of the view, unless the judiciary proves us wrong, but our view is any of those funds must pass through the Parliament for ratification, and then from there, then he can do whatever he wants to do. Thank you.
Specifically why I said that the fact that things have been done in a particular way over the years doesn't necessarily make it right. If you discover that there have been errors on the method, especially to the extent illegalities, it can be corrected.
May I?
That's my. As I said, we can do
Honourable Chair.
With the
Honourable
Justice and see what.
Honourable Chair.
We are not convinced.
Yes, you are not convinced. But Honourable Chair,
yes, sir.
it will now be the only country in the whole world when the IMF is providing facilities to government, it will be subjected to National Assembly or Parliament ratification. This is a standard operating procedure, and they do it with every country all over the world. So it will be only in the Gambia now that anything that is coming from them, the ECF is different from the RCF. I think we need a whole session really to debate on this. But what I am here today to ask is supplementary appropriation in order to be able to respond to the needs of the vulnerable. We can go on this definition of environment tomorrow or today by 4. We should be able to provide all the information we need. The additional information that will be provided is the written document from the World Bank to indicate that that 5 million from the SOE project, it was a mutually agreed understanding between the bank and the government of the Gambia just to be able to fund COVID-19.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, with all due respect, I don't think honorable members of this committee came to this meeting bearing in mind or with the view that you were going to come and appeal for an SAP. I think the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the then on the AOP. So, but I don't think it is right for us to devote the whole time of this meeting to your request for an SAP. Let's try to exhaust this issue first, and then We've taken note of your request, and some honorable members have given their views on that. But let's.
What Mr. Cham said about the daily activities of the bank, fine, that's correct. You don't need those to come here as the bank doing its job. But if you say a rapid credit facility that's going to be charged onto the consolidated funds of this country, people are going to be asked to pay it. And the law says, if you have such a thing, it must be approved by people's representatives. Somebody said grant, the Honorable Minister said he didn't know that grants should be approved here. You said that before, not today, before you said it in the Parliament. Yes, in the plenary. But let me tell you, why, do you know why there is a need for this? Because you see, some grants can be bets. Some grant can be bets to use it to get a country in a way you want to get it. And it's the responsibility of members of Parliament to determine that, to say whether we want a grant which is going to enslave us or not. So that's why even that should be approved by Parliament. We should review it and say thank you to the person who is, or the country or the government is giving it, but we must see it. So please, let us accept the fact that before, I said it in Parliament, and I'm sorry to say it again, we had House of Representatives before. But for me, real parliament never existed in this country up till now, until today. They were just doing things helter-skelter. And that we are not in that situation anymore. So that's why the past should be the past. The law is very clear. What she cited is very clear. That is to also is a loan. Rapid credit facility is a loan. It's not a gift. It has to be paid, even if there is no interest rate on top of it. It has to be paid. So it has to be it's going to be charged onto the consolidated fund, which belongs to the people. So that's why it should be approved by Parliament. And I don't think you can convince us to accept a practice which does not conform to the law that she has cited.
I think it would make interesting reading to look at the 1970 Constitution that the so-called House of Representatives was using. Yes.
I have a copy.
I have a copy myself.
Okay.
On the issue about the grants, I'm glad you mentioned it. I've always had this issue with the grants. The Constitution again says all international agreements must be ratified in Parliament. A grant is an international agreement between you or a country or an international organization. That is the reason why grants should come to Parliament to be ratified. And the reasoning behind this in law is you cannot have a National Assembly that is not going to be aware of the finances of the country. If these people have the right to enter into agreements or take loans without our knowledge, how would we hold them accountable? The only way we can know these facilities exist, these loans exist, is when they bring them to us and we have it on our record. Without it, we can't hold them accountable on these funds because we are not going to be aware. And that is what has been happening. Grants will come, National Assembly is not aware. Would we hold you accountable on that funds? It's simple sense to me that these things must be approved. No, they only brought those grants because they had loan components. This is when they were mixed. They are forced to bring it because there is a loan component. Otherwise, they don't bring it, and that it baffles me really. I think we have to sort out this problem because the Constitution is saying if we don't ratify it, they are not supposed to spend it. Now these monies have already hit their accounts. What's going to happen? I think immediately we have to solve this problem, whether we are going to invite Central Bank, invite the Minister of Justice, invite the Ministry, let them sit down, let's see who's right and who's not so we can move on, because without it, you are not supposed to be using the funds.
Honorable Chair. Yes, Honorable Chair. There are two things. Maybe just to save time, maybe the minister can consult with his counterparts. But the international agreement this is talking about really is under foreign affairs. And if I may read, that is the section 79, foreign affairs, subsection 2, the Gambia shall not enter into any engagement with any other country which causes it to lose its sovereignty, without the matter first being put to a referendum and passed by such majority as may be prescribed by an act of National Assembly. This is talking about international relations between Gambia and other countries.
No, there is another one.
No, just say. Which other one? Maybe. I'm on 79. I'm comparing the two, the international agreement and also the loans. The loan is separate on section 154. And the international agreement is under foreign affairs. Maybe to save time, maybe we can make some further consultations just to ensure that we understand strictly what are they talking about. But for me, personally, I believe overall, anything dealing with finance, between us and the other countries, I think it has to come here. Let's get clarification to ensure that we are the lawmakers, but sometimes we don't interpret the laws, like we always say. So let's make more consultations to ensure that we actually understand the difference between the two. Yeah.
I think this is an important issue.
It is.
Discussed and give a so that we can come to an agreement, a clear understanding of everything. Otherwise, we all be looking in the dark and going over the legalities where we should not. Yes. Yes, any more?
Honorable Chair, I concur with what Honorable Mo is saying. I think what I was trying to say that I've been in the finance ministry for over 30 years plus, from the first, second, and third republic. And we only come to the National Assembly or House of Reps if there is a loan and grant component to be ratified. And most of the time, it is the creditor or the financier that will request for that ratification. That is why I said we are not aware, because only if it is a loan and grants, those are the times that we will come. But I have never ever witnessed. Yes, I know, but this is where I think all of these are subject to legal interpretation, foreign affairs component and finance. So I think let us do further consultations and see what will be the legal advice.
And the earlier we do it, the better.
Yes. Yes.
I just have one question.
No.
Yes, we know that we have grants, but can the Honorable Minister clarify whether when we say grant, it means zero interest or whatever, but don't they come up with administrative charges? They don't.
No. A grant is a grant. No charges.
Yeah, they are yet to respond to my question about the role of the IFMI system in relation to this public financing and stuff like that.
I think we wanted you to allow the to respond to below the line.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I will start from the below the line account that the Honorable raised, that the below the line accounts were closed. Specifically, regarding to COVID-19, what the Ministry of Finance did with the 500 million is to cut budget line items across and then mop up 500 million in terms of budget, number one. And then a budget line item was created, COVID-19 budget line item of health. All these budgets were lumped into that budget line item. And then step two, what we did, we did not want to spend directly from one single budget line item, so we created a below the line project account. This is a project account, but still within the IFMIS. It is still within the ministry, within the government system. That's where we created this project. And under the project, COVID-19 project, we created detailed expenditure line items. So when the Ministry of Health makes a request that in the next maybe 1 month or 2 weeks or whatever, this is what we require in terms of funding, then the Ministry of Finance would release that amount through the COVID-19 account under the Ministry of Health. Then that amount is transferred to the project. This is a further control, because what we'll do, we will move those funds from the consolidated fund, from the TMA, the Treasury Man account, and get them in this project so that they are protected, because we protect them for the COVID-19. And detailed expenditure would be raised through this COVID-19 project, and then the expenditure would be recorded. So everything is recorded on the IFMIS. That now leads to Honorable Mbo's question. Everything is recorded on the IFMIS, and everything can be reported, because we have created all the payees relating to COVID-19 expenditure, so that if you want to look at government's relationship regarding COVID-19 with a particular supplier, you can go and look at every detail, relationship or transaction. And then if you want to look at a particular expenditure line item also, for example, how much did we spend in sanitary material or equipment, then you will go and get the aggregate from different suppliers. You have the opportunity to look at detail at a supplier level. You have the opportunity to look at aggregate at a particular item level. And then also you have the opportunity to pull out a report consolidated, everything, anything coming from the government in terms of COVID-19 from this 500 million. And then whatever happens to the 500 million also is transparent. If it is added, the addition would come out, on the reports and everything, how much was added, what happened, when, all those details are there available. So that is why we calling it below the line, but it's a special project, setup that we did, because we just want to enhance the transparency, so that anybody that wants to come and look at it would see whatever they want to see, including audit, including post-COVID audit and everything, so that everything is very transparent. With regards to donations also, because we have been receiving some donations, individual, maybe some institution that come forward to say we want to donate to government. What we did, we opened a special bank account for these local donations. These donations we are receiving, and then we get them deposited into this bank account again, so that it can be subject to audit. Anybody, even as an individual, I can trace my donation, so that I can trace my donation to that bank account, so to make it as transparent as possible, and then subject the entire process to scrutiny. Whoever is interested can scrutinize the arrangement. I think, Honorable Minister, with regards to the World Bank funding, the $10 million, that one, according to the financing agreement, it is to be administered through the PCU, that's the Project Coordination Unit under the Ministry of Health. That's the executing agency. So what we did was to create the relevant bank accounts. We opened the relevant bank accounts for them in dollar and Dalasi for local operations, and then we advise them. So that information is provided to the World Bank. In case they are disbursing any amounts, they will disburse. But a lot of it also, they will disburse directly through direct payments to suppliers, because they are assisting, they are helping in the procurement process. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I hope that is clear. That's the operational, that's why I asked him to come. But I think we will try by 4 o'clock, we'll provide as much information as you, what you requested. We'll hand deliver it. But I think this issue of the legal interpretation, you can give us a date, we can come back and with both Solicitor General and also Foreign Affairs. So we can, including the central bank governor.
Yes, we'll have an internal discussion on that and then we will communicate.
You can help us because you are a lawyer at the central bank, Honorable Chair.
Yes, but I don't seem to be still working at the central bank. I want to be as independent as possible. And then this is a committee we all have collectively. At the end of the day, the committee will come to a decision. It's not the decision of my end.
Can we have a date today or?
Thank you.
And also regarding the interpretation, meaning not statutory body like Supreme Court that can do interpretation.
Sorry, I can't hear
You
you.
interpret law when it is but it is ambiguous.
Yeah.
But this seems to me is clear, unconditional, and unambiguous. So I don't see.
But honorable members, and specifically my learned colleague, you know that we can disagree to agree, and you can concede to my arguments. If I convince you, you concede, right? So let's engage each other and
But
agree.
is it not only the Supreme Court that can?
No, that is for interpretation of. No, we are not interpreting. There is no ambiguity. Ambiguous interpretation. Let's have our internal discussions, and we'd find, as you suggested, and we will agree, Justice and Foreign Affairs and Central Bank, yes. And we can also come up with our lawyers. We have our subject matter specialists, legal subject matter specialists, and any other honorable member of the House who is interested probably in legal matters, interpretation.
We just have to have enough time for that because it's a very interesting issue.
But you know, time is of essence, and we are dealing with a pandemic. We need to move very fast.
Yeah. I think that's the reason.
Tell us anything about the package, the so-called stimulus?
No, it's coming. It's coming. It will. That's why it is linked. It is linked. The SAP and all of these things is linked to the package. It is linked. It is linked.
I have heard you on TV saying that you are working on the data. But I have seen on TV equally some institutions, private persons, who have donated, who have used the area councils, they have used the village alcaldes to extend assistance to the villages. So why can't you still use that information? Why do you have to wait for GBOS? It's taking such a long time when these people are there. The alcaldes live in the village. They know each and every household in each village. So I would suggest you try and use the alcaldes.
Honorable Chair, that is beyond me. I think there are people operational on the ground, local government. They are more equipped. Honestly, I wish I can do this yesterday.
They're very equipped. They are very equipped. I know, and then. Yes.
In our consultation with the local government. In our consultation with the local government, it's also very clear that their data also is not 100% accurate. You know what they told us? That there's a difference between compound and household. Because they tell me that if you can have a compound and you may have 4, 5 or more households. Yes. And then, so to be honest with you, I think there's a problem of data in this country, in general. There's a problem of data. So it's not really very, I don't know what will take for GBOS to correct that.
On that point, if you go, for instance, if you go to Gagan in the 70s, it's different from the Gagan. They have Argentine Street. But if you go to Gagan in the 70s, they have maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6 people.
Inside, yeah. So I think it's a data problem. Yeah. All right.
Yes, Honorable. Please don't put Gagan there. Please don't include Gagan.
I do want to advise my honorable friend, if you want your SAP to be palatable on our tables, don't make it conditional. You understand what I'm saying?
I know.
I'm saying if you want your SAP, your supplementary appropriation is going, if you want it to be palatable on this table, don't make it conditional. Don't link it to anything. But you are now linking it to COVID-19 to convince us of the necessity for it. So I'm saying, please don't do that.
Well, I think...
Did you get this point?
The 1 billion that has been sent is purely for COVID-19. That's why I'm linking. I cannot spend it without your approval. It's not a condition.
I'm saying SAP.
Huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because it was only in the budget. So it has to come.
It has to. It's paid purposely for that. That's why I cannot touch it. I have to come to you. Yeah. Yes. 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 Honestly, we.
Honorable, as chair of the Senate committee, you're expecting some information, and I understand that you're starting your tour tomorrow or this afternoon. So please, if you receive it, can you forward it so that we can share it?
In fact,
we may probably need to meet
know,
so
so sad.
so that we can proceed. We don't have to just
But the grants is a gift. You still want notification. That's why I told you. I think it's a gift. It's
some value are not even aware.
That's the end of the session. I hope you're not giving it.
No, those ones will be edited. It will be edited, sir. Yes, thank you very much. This is the end of the session. The Minister of Finance was summoned by the Public Finance Committee, that's the FPAC, to give him the details about the funds that has, so far received in this country and the millions we are talking about finally. It has exposed so many things that have been discussed, and all of you were following it. It's your brother Kexx, Sanneh. Thank you. Bye from me.
It's better for me to sign up.
And just this corporation, that any fund that is to be charged to the consolidated fund must be provided by, and this is part, anything that is to be charged on the consolidated fund. It says any other money.
No problem.
I think